We've got a big day coming up at Woodbine. Very, very excited. Take a look at some of the specifics for today. It is King's Plate Day. If you're not sure what that means, it is the Canadian version of the Kentucky Derby. They have 17 horses lined up, Canadian breds, that are going to run in race number 10 today. But that's just one of the big races on a 13 race card with 5 stakes races. In race number 2, there's an early pick 5 with a $100,000 guaranteed pick 5 pool. And there's also a pick 5 carryover from yesterday. It starts in race number 2. Then in race number 6, they have that middle pick 5. That's the one that Barry Spears and myself, Gino Bucola, are going to talk about with you. It's an all stakes pick 5, and it ends with the King's Plate with the field of 17. They also have $250,000 guaranteed in the late pick 4 and late pick 5. So 3 pick 5s on the card today. There's a mandatory payout in the jackpot high 5, and there's a mandatory payout in the pick 6, plus a pick 5 carryover. All of that going down today. I've got my good friend here to join me, Barry, the Sniper Spears. How are we doing today, my friend?
Hanging in there, you know me. Always looking for a good opportunity to make some wagers, and this card is it. The King's Plate is where it's at today.
And how crazy is this? As you and I talk on Sunday morning at around 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern time, I'm the one in California that's sitting here awaiting a possible hurricane. It's like we got role reversal here. Normally, you're the one in Gulfstream that's got all that crazy weather down there in Florida, in the Gulfstream area when we're talking about those races. But me, I'm on hurricane watch. The reason why I mentioned that, for some reason, things go wonky and cattywampus with my connection, my internet. I apologize. We've been getting all sorts of warnings, but doesn't look like the worst of this weather has hit. So let's see if we can get through this all stakes pick 5 today, Barry. Oh, it is great racing lined up. And what's cool, you and I talked about some of these races like a month ago, like some of the preps for these horses that'll be running back in Woodbine races recently. So we'll get a chance to dive on in. Don't forget, if you need any help, take a look at the screen again for all of the specifics that you have on today's menu. One more piece of housekeeping as we get set to dive into the daily racing form past performances. I want to let you all know you can actually get these for free. That's a big talking point for horse players. Paying for information, paying for past performances. When you sign up for DRF bets, you will actually get past performances for free because every time you bet $50, you'll get a credit. And if you don't have an account, look at this awesome sign up bonus that they have for you right now. It's a $250 deposit match. You deposit $250, they give you a $10 free bet. All of a sudden your $250 has become $510, and then you're diving into these past performances like Barry and I are going to do right now, looking at the formulator style past performances. So Barry, we will kick things off today in that all stakes pick 5, $250,000 guaranteed in the pick 5 pool. And what's awesome is that you can play these with a 20-cent base wager. Remember to get to drf.com for your past performances, for any help when you're handicapping the races. What we start with, Barry, is a 2-year-old race. This one is the Catch a Glimpse for 2-year-old fillies. Mark Casse had a couple horses that were cross-entered in this race and then in the 2-year-old race for the boys. Just sort of wanted to see what the lay of the land was and figure out where he wanted to go with a couple of those runners. So we'll get an idea. I think I sent you the tweet yesterday that we saw from Ron Giernick from DRF, who said, Ready to Jam and Sugar Treat will be running in this race. So we'll know that those two run in this one. And then in the following race, it'll be Dancing Duchess and Golden Canary. So they're going to be running against the boys. So as far as in this one, we won't have Dancing Duchess and we won't have Golden Canary. They're going to be entered in the later race against the 2-year-old boys. So Casse has a chance to kind of spread them out a little bit. What's difficult about this race, Barry, just from a gambling standpoint, you have the July 15th race that a lot of these horses come out of. It was the My Deer. And right before that race, it started pouring and the weather was like bad. So sometimes it's hard to take that as, you know, the measuring stick when you're using it to gauge all of these horses off of. Some of those horses might not have liked the way it started pouring right there, you know, before that race. So just at least something to mention, but a really fun 2-year-old race to get started with to kick this pick 5 off. Talk to me about some of the horses that are on your radar or horses that you'd want to use in your pick 5.
Yeah, you're spot on about that the weather situation on that July 15th race because it got really nasty real quick. And who knows how it really affected these horses. But this race to me looked like it was kind of wide open. It would be hard for me to take somebody at a short price in
Oh
this
yeah.
field. There's no real, solid form to go off of. These horses come in and out of form. They improve and run bad races, at the drop of a dime. So I would tend to kind of spread in this race. The horse that I actually keyed in on that I would say would be my best play in this race or my top pick would be number 10, Rosa.
That's so funny that we both land on the same one right off the bat too. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a half to a pretty decent turf horse in Robillard. Those two turf works or the turf works that she's had on July 23rd and then one again on August 6th were pretty good in preparation for this. Seems to be kind of heading in the right direction. I like the way she won first time out. So that one definitely piqued my interest. Also, another one that kind of fits in the same
So as you're
category.
talking, not to interrupt, we're
Oh
watching
yeah.
Rosa's race. She's the number 6 in this race. And I just wanted to point it out because what was impressive of it, it was visually impressive. She was mid-pack. Look, she's like 7th of 8 in this field. You don't normally see a 2-year-old filly first time out of the box pass the whole field like this. And look how
Yeah.
she had to go in between horses, inside of horses like that. That's something that's discouraging a lot of times for horses who are just making their debut. Look at how she weaves her way through.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that's really impressive. And as you mentioned, 4-time winning turf sibling. She's worked on the turf. Look at her angle out here and just blow right on by. Like very, very nice performance
Mhm.
from Rosa. And I don't think it's a coincidence that both you and I land on her because she was visually impressive.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the way that she ran in that race, she's a racer. Like she has
Yep.
the mind for it, and she wants to run. That's always a good thing. And the 6 horse, Never Silent, kind of fits in the same category. The turf pedigree is pretty decent out of Silent Name, Summertime Friend Dam. Uh, these can be any kind, and 15 to 1 on a horse like this
Well, because they're
seems
all the same, right? They're
right.
all like not separated by a whole lot. Is even in speed figures and stuff. She in her race, they all like 4 horses sort of line.
Hmm.
They were kind of
Well, that
lining up, and she kind
yeah,
of
it was nice.
pushed. It was a good effort from her. Living Magic right next door showed some good speed too, pushing
Hmm.
through. She's honest. You have Erosa who won gate to wire in that race and was pretty impressive there. If she were able to get out front and clear, it might be tough to catch her. There's
Sugar Treat, the
Sugar
one
Treat.
that runs here, 15 to 1 on the morning line, which I don't think you're gonna get, but um, has every right to improve coming back
From
to the
Saratoga.
turf. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Schuylerville was a pretty tough race. Why
And just
not here?
compared to this,
Mhm.
like these, right? That's probably a classier group of horses as 2-year-olds
Sure.
that are a little farther ahead than some of the others. And yeah, there's no knocks there. For me, like a must use is also Ready to Jam. Picking this race, just
Yes.
looking at how well she improved in her second start, and she's gonna get it. She should get a nice trip. If they go quickly, she'll get the trip. She beat the boys last time out, and so she comes back now and faces the fillies in here. It's just one of those fantastic races. Like the
Hmm.
horses you mentioned are in the mix for me. And then what makes the race tough is that now the 11's out. Dancing Duchess is going to be in the other race, but I think she's going to be aggressive in next time she shows up, which we see her later, because I think she didn't want to come from off as much. I bet you they get aggressive with her. That'll change things in the next race where she shows up. We
Yeah, I
both
think
start
those
with
those
Rosa.
two those two decisions by Cassie really impacted this pick 5.
Yep.
I think those 4 horses will make an impact on this.
Yeah. Well, and mainly a lot of a reason too, because not only are they players, but the couple of them have speed, right? So they could really have a say
Mhm.
in the outcome of the race, even if they weren't good enough to win. Just how it shapes up. Um,
Yeah, even the
fun.
one in this first race,
I know.
Bolt and Nori, I'm going to use that one too.
What's wrong with this horse?
Yeah,
Nothing.
nothing. Absolutely
The horse
nothing.
backed out of a leading group and was sitting third. And then was a couple lengths off, loomed up 3 wide, challenged at the top of the lane, and then faded. She actually might have been second best in that race because she kind of
Yep.
loomed up to challenge a lone speed horse, and then she backed up. I always love the horse that takes a shot,
Hmm.
because then sometimes a couple horses will pass her late, but she is absolutely a player in here with the blinkers on. Javier Castellano's up for the big day because he's going to be riding Stanley House. We talked about what a fantastic year it's been for him, right? Won the
Oh yeah.
Derby, won the Belmont. He'd love to have a big day up in Canada and win their most
King's
prestigious
Plate.
race,
Yeah.
right? That
Why
would be
not?
awesome. And why not steal a few races on the undercard as well, like the Catch a Glimpse? So many directions to go in here. Horses for sure on my radar. 10 and 5 all over the place for me. And then probably 5 or 6 other horses in that next tier. Those are
Yeah.
like my for sure's, the horses that I kind of started with that I definitely wanted to mention. But as Barry was hitting on, it is such a great 2-year-old betting race here with all these different directions to go. Get involved in this pick 5 that starts in race number 6. It's the Catch a Glimpse. Anything else you want to mention about this one, buddy, before we move along?
No, it's wide open. I hope we get a price.
Let's do it. Let's move to the grade 3 bold venture. I believe we have 2 graded stakes races in this sequence. Remember, the King's Plate is not a graded stakes race because it's a restricted race to Canadian breds. So the 7th race is the grade 3 bold venture. We'll be going 6.5 furlongs on the synthetic in this one. And we'll look at, for the dodgeball fans, Patches O'Houlihan will be a horse who takes a good amount of money. He's a 3-year-old Ontario bred, and he's a horse who's really fast. He's won 5 of his 6, but he'll be trying 6.5 furlongs. I say for the first time because he hasn't won going beyond 6 furlongs. He's tried 7, and he wasn't a winner there. That was on the turf. From how the race shapes up, he's sort of one of the horses to start. What do you think about him in this spot, not only facing open, but also facing older? This is a big step up for him.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny because this is a sprint race and you would think there's some speed in here, and there really isn't.
No,
He kind of has the run of the race, but I'm going to use him for sure.
because of
Uh,
that. But
right, exactly. But
yeah,
I'm not. He's not my top pick because I think it is a tough task to go
and
against older
because
horses and
this
these
this
ones in
group
particular.
and the
Yeah.
6.5, I think all those factors together, like the tougher group, the older open company and 6.5, I think putting those all together, I could see him being a little bit vulnerable late. But he's tough for me to leave out of the pick 5 because there are definitely versions of this race where he just gets loose.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why he's staying on my ticket. But the horse that I would say would be my top pick would be the 10 Super Watson.
Again, we're on the same spot here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he gets a good trip here, especially I think he can flank Patches O'Houlihan and kind of just skate with that one all the way around until the stretch and then and take over. That's how I see the race kind of
Exactly.
unfolding. The only other horse that might merit a shot is a big long shot that has run some pretty good races in the past that hasn't been out in a while. Is the 3 County Final.
Yeah.
Um, I think that one merits a good shot. It's been training well. It kind of doesn't make sense to ship up there for this race to ride. Juan Crawford. It just seems a little weird. I think this horse might end up running well.
So on the outside, Barry and I will both land on Super Watson. I want to just show the race last time out on July the 22nd. Super Watson beat a couple of the common opponents that he'll face today. So he's the 8 in the race that we're watching right here. And he has to move in this race. It's a field of 7, but he's last and he's widest of all. And I think it just shows you how handy he is. Right. I think like Kimura now has sort of figured him out and just figured out that like I can lose a little bit of ground with this horse. Let's just sort of keep him in the clear and not get him stopped. And I think he's better than a lot of these. And he goes here from last and he makes the wide move and he goes all the way to first, widest of all. And he has to hold off a challenge. Barry, he's won 5 of his last 10 races. This horse. He's just in fantastic form. So in those string of 10 races, as we see the big gray starting to make his move here, he has 8 in the money finishes in 10 races. One of the races he didn't finish in the money, they tried the turf. And the other race, he finished 4th. Like, you just don't get sharper and more consistent than this. And here he comes to the outside. And remember, this was 6. I think he's going to be even better at 6.5. Like the 6.5 to me, with his running style, the way he can just sort of grind it out, wear you down, and then he holds off Last American Exit. And it didn't look like Last American Exit was going to get by him.
No, he was never going to get by him.
He could have held him off the length again. And I agree with you. I like the way he's drawn. And if I'm looking at a horse like the 1 versus the 10, the 1 with the rail makes me a little bit nervous sometimes, right? With a horse with this running style who's going to have to come from the back, maybe navigate traffic or go all the way around. I would prefer a horse like the 10 to the outside, who you and I are both on. You mentioned County Final as a live long shot. I want to talk a little bit about the 7 too, Border Town. You know, if we're looking at some of these common races, Dream Shake, who he lost to, came right back out of this race and won the Connaught Cup and beat the number 9 Old Chestnut. And so you're looking at a graded stakes winner here who just beat him in an allowance race. Keep in mind, for Border Town, that was his first start for the Drexler barn, who's really good first off the claim. This is a horse who's shown ability, and I wouldn't be shocked if maybe this new barn just tweaked something a little bit, got him figured out, and now he's only going to make his 3rd start on the synthetic. There might be a little bit of upside with this 7-year-old here, Barry. He's going to be in the mix for me as a long shot. Give me anyone else in here that you were looking at, either positives, negative, anything else you want to mention about this 7th race?
Yeah, Border Town was one I definitely took a second look at. I ended up not being that enamored because I didn't think that Dream Shake race was actually all that good. Even the one that Dream Shake ended up going to win the Connaught Cup.
Connaught Cup after.
I didn't think it was all that great, but at 15-1, and this horse is definitely fits with the rest of these horses. You kind of can't leave them out
at a nice price, especially if you're playing one of these bigger 20-cent type tickets where you're spreading around and you're looking for price horses to use.
Exactly.
This would be
what do
one
you
of
do
them.
with the 2? That was the one that I really didn't know.
Me
what
too.
To do with,
total wild card.
Yeah,
total wild card.
The Australian horses are usually quick and like these sprint distances, and they have synthetic over there, so it's I don't know.
And in watching his race, he is handy. He looks like the type of horse he's sort of maneuverable and you can kind of put him in different spots. He was just sitting 4th on the rail, like 2 or 3 lengths off. He stayed inside, and he has like a nice tactical style. I think he could get a good trip in here. If this is a race that you are looking at in the sequence as a spread race, if you're going 3 or 4 deep, he's on the ticket for me. Like there. Yeah. I've got him as a wild card for sure here. Anyone else to mention? We talked a little bit about Old Chestnut. He's honest. He's honest. He's just sort of consistent. I just like others more.
Doesn't win. He doesn't win enough for me.
And I think he can loom up and run well, but others intrigue me a little bit more at the price they're going to be. Anyone else in here? We got
and Super 10. Watson handled them pretty easily back.
Exactly.
Last year.
It was just hard for me to see reasons why those horses that ran behind Super Watson could improve on him. He was behind him and just went all the way around him.
Yep.
There were no real excuses. It was like, I'm just better than this group right now.
Yeah, I figured just the way it might be betting that Old Chestnut and Super Watson will be flip-flopped into wagering.
Yeah, I could see that. 7-2-ish, 4-1 for Super Watson.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so as we talk about this, I'm glad you mentioned that. There's a $20 stable duel contest today. He's a great stable duel horse, right? He's 6-1 on the morning line. I don't think he's going to be that, even if it's a little lower, 7-2, 4-1, 9-2-ish. He's honest as all heck. He shows up every time. Get involved in that $20 stable duel contest today, and you can kick back and watch the races and play along because there's 13 races. Maybe you don't have a ton of money. Maybe you just or your paycheck isn't coming until next week. You can play a $20 contest and have action in 10 of the races and kick back and have a ton of fun today while playing along. Super Watson would be one horse to recommend to use in your stable dual lineups. Okay, let's turn the page to the middle part of this pick 5 sequence. Barry and I will talk about the Soaring Free. So this is the 2-year-old turf race for the boys. In the 6th race, we saw the 2-year-old filly version of this race. Now, keep in mind, Mark Casse has a couple horses that are cross-entered in here. Ready to Jam is going to run in the filly race, and Sugar Treat is going to run in the earlier race that we discussed. So Dancing Duchess, she is in this race. Reason why I mentioned that, because she's quick. And when she won Going Gate to Wire on June the 17th, she showed really good speed. She actually beat a horse named Stormcast, who came back and won really impressively yesterday on Saturday. And then Dancing Duchess, she had a fine start, but it was one of those situations where somebody had to take back. She took back, and the horse who stayed up front won. I wonder if they get aggressive again in here, just because that worked well for them. Hey, let's try to put her on the front end, because she could be, in looking in this race, for a race like this with these 2-year-olds, there's really not that much early speed in here, right? A lot of these horses have sat off the pace. Rhapsody showed speed, but you look at Rhapsody and Dancing Duchess, all of the other horses won from off the pace, which is a little surprising. Normally, when you have a race like this, a 2-year-old stakes race, they all have ones by their name, right? They were all like just faster than everybody in a 5 furlong race. Nobody's passed a horse. We don't even know if anybody could sit. This race is kind of the opposite.
Well, it's funny you say that, because that's how I envisioned it as well. And I thought that would mean the 8 Busick
perfect trip
will
right?
have the right, and that's what I think. They'll get an excellent trip. If we get 4-1, I'll be very happy, and we might, because the one Rhapsody, Dancing Duchess, and Busick should take some money. So maybe if they're probably about 2.5, 3-1 each, that's probably what we're looking at. I also thought Triple T, who actually beat Busick the first time out.
And I like him as a horse, but I'm a little bit worried, like we talk about with the lack of speed.
Right, it's a kind of a crapshoot, especially with the pace scenario and the turf angle. First time turf, it could be a little tough. So you want to get your price. Same thing with Golden Canary. I think that horse actually rates a pretty good chance to kind of rate off of this speed. From the way outside post. He
wasn't far behind Erosa, who was the Gate to Wire winner.
Exactly.
In the earlier race. So maybe from that outside, he sits a nice trip in here. Just a really fun race, too. I'm glad you mentioned Triple Trey, because I actually liked him in the Sanford, and he did not run poorly in there. He was sort of in a weird spot. When he started to move from the back, Gold Sweep was like leaning on him the whole time. He had a horse to his outside the whole time, like putting pressure on him as they moved. And he honestly was not that far out of second that day, because Yo-Yo Candy won by 2 1/4, and he was only, fourth by 3 1/4. So he was only a length out of second. And even with a little bit of kind of trafficy trouble, they also have worked him on the turf too, which is a positive. And the Dam never tried turf, but he does have a winning turf sib. There are 2 sort of intriguing horses I wanted to mention in here. You already hit Busick and Triple Trey, who I'm glad you hit on. The 6, who's a maiden still, because I wanted to show his race.
Okay.
Because he actually lost.
Yes, this one. Yeah, definitely.
He lost to Ready to Jam, who we both think is a player in the earlier race. Now we're going to look at the number 10, 4 Strong Winds. So this is his second start. This is going 6.5 on the turf, and this is actually his first turf start. And so you see the 6, the 10 in here. He's the 6 in the race that we're talking about for later on today. And 4 Strong Winds is sitting a fine trip early on. He sort of backs off a little bit, and he's wide. So he's sitting kind of 4th, 5th. And now we're going to see 4 Strong Winds. He is going to make this huge big 4 wide move all the way up to the lead, and he takes the lead early on. But what happens, Barry? He's just a little bit green switching leads once he hits the front. This is something that happens with young horses. They strike the lead and then they get a little bit green. They don't know what to do. Here comes his big move. So what I like, he doesn't have to be too far off of it, but right here you could see when they start to ask him, he's kind of leaning on the wrong side. He's having a tough time getting straight, and that's why Ready to Jam's able to blow by. But this horse is kind of got that trip that we're looking for in here, right? He might be able to sort of stalk and pounce, and if he can just straighten himself out, look at how clear he is of the third place finisher here. That was like a winning type race. He just lost to a horse who was a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that replay kind of tells everything you need to know about that horse. The potential is there. Hopefully the price will be right today, because that one merits a really good chance at a big price. He ran a winning race last time, and then obviously Ready to Jam it was well meant. So yeah, I would hope this horse is look at the breeding on this horse.
I was gonna say beautiful breeding and like awesome Woodbine connections too. Like local connections that aren't necessarily known in the US maybe or in North America all over the place. Hernandez is one of the top perennial riders over there, and this barn is excellent, especially with young horses. They're really good. This horse has also worked again on the turf, and like you said, the breeding is beautiful. This horse has 2 winning turf siblings, and one of them was a stakes winner. Sister Siegel won a stakes race in her only race on the turf, and the other one was stakes placed. Mo Big Cat, who won on the turf, basically like this in his second start, and then he was in the Grade 1 to Talma later on. So they thought enough of that horse. He lost on one of his races to Wonder Godot. There's something there with this horse at 20-1, 4 strong wins, a fun horse to include in your pick fives. And don't forget, this one also kicks off the mandatory jackpot power pick 6. So this starts the pick 6. Then the next race we're going to talk about starts the guaranteed late pick 5, $250,000 guarantee. Anything else you want to mention in this one before we move on, buddy?
No, I mean, this is, as you can see, these are all great races.
This is the only one I wanted to mention, the 3. Please advise. You know why? Look at the horses who he was behind in his last start. No Name Mets for George Weaver, who went over to Royal Ascot and was only 6-1. And then Ship Cadet, who we saw come back yesterday and win.
Yep.
So that race has come back very, very live. Ship Cadet won the off the turf Skidmore, but still showed ability in winning that race. And then in his debut at Belmont, when he won, he actually beat a couple next out winners. He beat a horse named Noted, who came back to win a maiden special weight in his next start. He beat a horse named Dark Vintage, who came back to win a maiden special weight in his next start. I have a hard time leaving him out of the pick 5 based on those races and what we saw yesterday with Ship Cadet. We know No Name Mets is really good. It is.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who gets left out, because obviously you can't bet them all.
No, exactly.
And somebody's going to be an overlay and somebody's going to be bet too much, and it's just a matter of who it's going to be.
And I'm sure all of you are going to play some of these big wagers too, right? The pick 4s, pick 5, pick 6s. But these races, for the point Barry is mentioning, make sure you save a little bit of your bankroll so you can play individually in these races too. Because as he's pointing out, we're in each of these races mentioning 3, 4, 5 horses that look live. 1 or 2 of those horses is going to be way higher than you think. That's the one that you want to go jump in on. Whoever you like a little bit and you're, wow, they're double what they should be, go get involved on them. And it could be Please Advise in this race. Maybe it's Triple Trey people forget a little bit about. Maybe it is Buick because the one gets action. Who knows? Demand value in these really contentious races. Okay, Barry, let's move to the Dance Smartly. We get a chance to look at last year's Canadian Horse of the Year, Moira. And she hasn't had the greatest start to 2023 so far. She's raced twice. She has had a little bit of trouble in her races. You know, you look at them, and on paper, they're kind of disappointing. They look a little better when you see that Fev Rover, who beat her, has come back in the next 2 races and finished 3rd in the Grade 1 Diana and then won the Grade 1 Beverly D. And maybe we can say in the June 3rd race, she was just a little bit short that day. Super hoity-toity, went gate to wire. From a talking standpoint, you have to start with her. She's a super talented filly. She won the Queen's Plate last year when it was the Queen's Plate. And then, to me, what may have been even more impressive, like in her second turf start, she was 5th in the Filly and Mirror Turf against older horses as a 3-year-old, only making her second turf start. And she was behind like Tuesday in Italian, real quality turf horses. But is she one of those horses that may have been a little precocious last year, maybe ahead of everybody? Has she taken the next step forward as a 4-year-old? No matter what, in any of these, because of her reputation, because everybody loves her, because of what a fantastic year she had last year. Let's talk a little bit about Moira. What do you think about her, Barry?
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely those questions are looming here because she didn't come back and win, what I thought were not super tough races. I mean, the
Especially the
last
June 3rd one for
right,
sure.
yeah,
That was the
that's
race.
the one.
Yeah, that was a softer race for sure.
Way softer, and she could have needed it. So, the jury's still out on it, but I just don't think that she's better on turf than she is on synthetic, and that's
Sure.
why, I'm gonna use her obviously, but I don't think that she merits
She's like
the
a
best chance.
standout or
Right.
single or cinch or anything like that.
I think Salima is. I mean, we've
Me
seen
too.
this move from Chad Brown many, 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 many times where he gives a horse a race, they win fairly easily, and then they come back in a stake race and they just air out. And I think that's what Salim is going to do.
I completely agree. The way that I see this race playing out, I think the 9 goes. I think she just sits second, right behind the 9. And she's going to make her second start off a 6-month layoff. She's going to make her second start as a 4-year-old. To me, I'm going to play 1 or 2 tickets where I probably single her, and then I can go spread in the other legs around. On some of these multi-exotics, like this one kicks off a late pick 5. She's going to be on everything for me. She's going to be a real key. And in a few of them, I will key on it because I just don't think there's that much speed in here. She will sit the trip. Miss Dracarys is the other speed, but she hasn't run since November. So if it plays out how I'm seeing it in my head, where she's a little fresh, she goes, and then Salima just sits, I think she stalks. She gets the jump on Moira or like a lot of the other deeper closers. It really feels like a good spot for Salima.
Yeah, I think I'm going to single her on most tickets, and then in a deeper ticket, use the 8 and the 9, Moira and Miss Dracarys. There's a situation where Miss Dracarys can kind of get a decent slow pace to run, and kind of extends that lead, and I can see that happening.
Me too. Yeah.
It's not out of the question, but I just think Salima is primed for a real big effort here.
Yep, completely agree. Now, on the tickets that I don't single Salima, I'm also going to throw in Il Malocchio, who was our guy last time, or gal we liked last time. And
nice
the reason,
price too.
The reason why I like her in this spot is because if the 7 and 9 don't win, I'm assuming it's because they win a little quick early, and it's setting up from someone off the pace. Il Malocchio's connections I was watching the broadcast before the Trillium ran on July 23rd, and they mentioned that she does not run well on the lead, and they don't want her on the lead. And it's funny, if you look at the 2 races where she was on the lead, she didn't win, and she actually got pretty soft trips on the lead too. It wasn't like the fractions were taxing you. If you backed her that day, you probably would have felt pretty good. Like, oh, nice. She's cruising up on the front. They're not going that fast. But what was funny is in the Trillium, I just want to point out the very start of the race. So it's funny because I was listening to this right before, and they say, yeah, I don't think she really wants to be on the lead. She doesn't run good on the front end. And so she's the 5 in this race that we're watching right now.
Right. Doesn't she break sharp?
And she's right on the lead.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, oh no, I don't want her on the lead. Right. Because I bet her this day. And then watch, they don't go on with her. They just sit and they let the others go on. I'm telling you, I was pulling my hair out watching this race because I'm like, Why
Why
would
did
you
they give it
go
up?
from
Yeah.
the front and all of a sudden then like a little farther in the race, like she's like fifth in between? You know what I mean? Like, look at the difference where she is now to where she was. She could have been on the lead, and now she's like 2.5 lengths behind. She's caught in between, and I'm going, oh my gosh,
Why?
why did she do this? But that's just the way she runs. She just runs better with the target. It's like I was saying before when we were pointing out with the 2-year-olds, it's almost like she gets lost on the lead and she doesn't have that same fight. But they said she digs in and she really fights when she's not. And yeah, I think she's not. If you look at her at first and you see maybe she's not as good on the turf, I just think she's better now than when she raced on the grass before. She has like 7 or 8 straight synthetic races, and she's just a better horse now than over a year ago when she was on the turf. So I'm going to throw her in on some of the other price, like in the spread race tickets. But for you and I both, it feels like it's big Salima race.
Yes, indeed.
Let's finish up. And I got to give a shout out to Stephanie, my girlfriend who's watching from the other room. She was a big fan of Schitt's Creek. Moira from Schitt's Creek, who great show. If you haven't watched that one, I got a Moira gif from Stephanie, who's listening and watching in the other room. So shout out Moira there. Let's finish up, Barry. And I want to thank all of you for hanging out with us this morning. Really appreciate you joining us on this Sunday morning on a day when there's no racing at Del Mar. They've already canceled the racing at Del Mar because there's supposed to be very, very bad weather here in Southern California with a hurricane coming up from Mexico. So Woodbine will get a major focus today. I really love that I love what Woodbine does too, Barry. They run their big days on Sundays, where a lot of other tracks will run them on Saturdays because they know on Sundays they get a lot of the focus. And today, everyone's going to be paying attention to this sequence, and it's all going to come down to this big race, race number 10. This is the King's Plate, $1 million up for grabs. What's cool about the Canadian Triple Crown too here versus compared to our American is they run on 3 different surfaces, which I think is really cool. So they go from synthetic to dirt to turf. They'll go from synthetic and start, then they'll go to Fort Erie and run on the dirt, and then they finish on the turf. So you really show something if you can win on those different surfaces here. And what we have seen recently, Barry, lots of success from the fillies in this race. Mm-hmm. The fillies have won 5 of the last 12 runnings of the plate. There have been 38 female winners in the 163-year history of the plate. It is now the King's Plate after switching from the Queen's Plate, which it has been since the 1950s, I believe. And man, a field of 17 horses lining up. You've got the top 6 from the plate trial and the top 2 fillies from the Oaks. You've got all of the best Ontario bred horses here. And man, this is like the Kentucky Derby for us down here. It really lined up like that this year with the way it is. I think Kalik is the lukewarm morning line favorite in this race, Barry, at 3-1. And you know what? Kalik's got plenty to prove in this race because he's never been on the synthetic. He seems, I don't want to say like he's one-dimensional, but he seems like he really does want to be forwardly placed to run his best races. And so he's going to be in a field of 17, trying to go 1.25 miles on a synthetic surface for the first time. He's not a cinch in here. So, man, from a talking standpoint, it just feels wide open.
Yeah, actually for Kalik, for me, no thank you.
I'm
Just
chucking
for those
completely.
Yeah,
Me too.
exactly. Just for the reasons you just mentioned, all those hurdles at a short price, I don't want any part of him.
Yep.
He can win,
And we've used
obviously,
other
but
favorites
yeah.
along the way in the sequence. This is a race where I'm going to be using a few. Kalik's not on the ticket for me.
Yeah, and actually, you know, funny you mentioned the fillies in this race. I do. That my top pick would be the 2 Elysian Field.
Yep.
I think she merits a huge chance, especially after that, you know, stretching out to 1.1 miles last time and kind of putting those away pretty handily. And she's bred to run all day, and I think she gets the run of the race. I have a feeling that this pace is going to get heated up.
Yeah.
With Kalik and a few others from the outside, horses that probably won't have too much of a chance, like Silent Miracle.
Yep, they got to go.
Is one of them.
Silent Miracle's got to go. I think Touch and Ride wants to sit close. Paramount Prince is going for sure. Cal Kokaipu wants to be close. We'll like push him and make him stretch out a little bit.
16.
And
Another
that's the
one.
key to the race because the 16 and the 18 were flip-flopped. I don't know if you read or you heard about this. There was an error in the like one of the purse distributions between the two of them, which was so we're gonna have to keep an eye on as far as the field is concerned because the 16, if in, obviously has like is a
more
major
chaos.
pace player too. But yeah, I think in this big field with some of these horses going a mile and a quarter for the first time, it's just going to be more honest. I think even a horse like Stanley House, he's not going to be on the lead,
right?
But Javier's
going to benefit.
Javier's not going to have him be dead last in this race early.
Right, he was the other one that he's the other one that I think merits a good chance here. You know, I don't particularly appreciate his price, but I think they gave him a spin in that in the plate trial. And now this horse is going to be ready to go.
Keep in mind, in the plate trial, Paramount Prince goes gate to wire, crushes, and there's no passing. So while he ran 6th, he actually wasn't that far out of the group that ran 2nd.
Right.
So it is a little bit better than it looks on paper because he was dead last and sort of got shuffled and then had to move wide, and there was no passing going on in that race whatsoever.
Yeah. Another horse that at a huge price that I think might, you know, might make his way into the exotics is Twin City the 4.
Sure.
Ran some decent races last year before going to the bench, then comes off the bench, runs a nice race first time out, kind of regresses a little bit, but way wide in that Marine, the grade 3 Marine, then comes back in the plate trial and ran a real credible race that day.
And he's kind of a grinder, you know, like I think that the distance shouldn't be a problem for him at all. I could see him just picking pieces up along the way. And if he trips, I completely agree with you. Like, I don't know if he's good enough to fly by them all, but if he's just in the right spot, he could absolutely fall into it. And I think he'll continue to grind away and pick up pieces. I would for sure want him in any type of multi-exotics I was playing. No doubt about it. I'm also going to use the filly. You mentioned Elysian Field. I think I'm going to use the filly that was right behind her too. Wickenheiser, who I liked last time out. You know, Wickenheiser is going to make her 3rd start off the bench, and Wickenheiser had some issues before she started her year. So her connections really think that she's going to get even better because now she's got more foundation. She just sort of got stopped before her rally started, and she's going to be taking back. She's going to make one late run. Distance will be no problem for her. She was competitive with the boys when she faced them 2 starts back. She ran 2nd that day behind Simcoe in her first start off the bench. So I'm using Elysian Field. I'm using Wickenheiser. Of the ones you haven't mentioned, I think there are a couple I wanted to discuss. Touch and Ride has the top buyer in the field. You know, he's only making his 3rd start. And so this might be a little too much to ask for him because that
was my thought.
Right. Like, he's wheeling back in 3 weeks too. Right.
He doesn't have the foundation to win this.
So, but he might just be, and he got a perfect trip in his race when he won, but maybe he's just a freaky good horse who's ahead of it. I'm going to toss him in 1 or 2 tickets because his price will at least be pretty fair and pretty honest. Since I've been following these horses over the last few months, Barry, the one horse who I've been really, really, really a fan of is this one, Cal Kokaipu, especially because it's so cool to say. And it's a term I was fascinated when I looked up what it meant because I was like, what is this? You know, the first time I remember looking at one of the races he was in, and it's a term that means wanderlust. We actually don't have a term for it in the English language. It means longing for a place that you've never been, like a longing for a place that you don't know exists, which I think that's such a cool concept of just this, like, almost like a melancholy, like a searching out for a place that you feel like, you know, it's like almost a weird deja vu pushing you somewhere, but you don't know why. Cal Kokaipu was a horse who, this is like the light bulb angle in full effect, right? That you see where he was knocking on the door all of last year. Like, he didn't run almost any bad races. He just couldn't put it all together. And then on May 20th, it was like 8 races of finishing second, of bad luck, all coming together, and he wins by 9 and just crushes. And then he comes right back in a stakes race and he beats Paramount Prince. And now he looks even better because Paramount Prince goes on and wins the plate trial. Then Kau Kokaipu faces Open Company in the Marine, and the horse that he lost to in that race, Turf King, is a nice horse for Chad Brown, who's won 3 of 4. I think you and I both liked Midnight Rising a little bit that day, who's also an honest horse who ran 3rd. So Kau Kokaipu, he's just a good, honest horse. Like I feel like he's going to run a good race. Is it like a winning race? I don't know if he wants the 1.25 miles and all that, but he really does show up all the time and put forth good effort. So I definitely wanted to mention him because I become such a big fan of his along the way. And anytime I can sound a little smarter by acting like I've done extra research and looked up terms like Kau Kokaipu, I'm going to try to show off a little bit if I can, Barry, because I got
I'm gonna have to put that one in my vocabulary.
Yeah, you know, I got to. So I've actually had a real blast because this is the first time this year I've been doing some work with Woodbine. So I've been following along, and I've been doing the Road to the King's Plate segments each week with Robert Geller and with Ron Gearkink from DRF, where we would pick a couple horses that were on the radar, talk about like a Derby watch, talk about their recent race, why we liked them a little bit, why we didn't like them, why we moved them up along the rankings. So it's been fun for me over the last couple months to really follow along with these horses on the road to the King's Plate. And now we are here. Barry and I only looked at these 5 stakes races, but remember, folks, there are much, much, much more action and stakes and involvement today. Just coming up in a bit, you've got the second race that kicks off the early pick 5, $100,000 guarantee. And there's a carryover yesterday of 81,000 in that pick 5 pool. The middle pick 5, that's the one that we just discussed. Remember, you can play for a 20-cent base wager. And if you're playing like Barry and I, and maybe you're leaving out Khalik in that last race, so you know that if you hit it, you're not going to have the favorite in the last race, you can play a little bigger ticket in a sequence like this, because if you're going to be using a few more prices, you don't always have to play, if you're going to spread around, it's okay to do that when you're throwing big prices and you're eliminating some chalks. Mandatory payouts in the jackpot high 5 and the power pick 6. Barry, it's an awesome day coming up, my friend. I thank you so much for hanging out with me. I thank you for handicapping the races this week. And it was nice because they got their races out a day earlier too. How much easier is it for us as handicappers? We can get the rate. We can look a little bit more. We can talk a little bit more about it. We have another day. I always love when big tracks do that, when they get their racing out a little bit earlier. And I hope it's a fantastic day for our friends up at Woodbine, because it really looks like a fun card on paper.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for this card, especially this sequence in particular. Hopefully we can all grab some of this cash and send it on in for Molson Million Day.
And
well, it's Woodbine Mile, right?
Yeah,
it's not Molson Mile anymore.
Yeah. And
showing my age. That's horrible.
Giving you a little love for yesterday. Spray was one that you had, right?
Oh,
I believe that was a sniper play right there. A Spray sat just the perfect trip. Beautiful trip, well ridden, geared down. Great call by you, Sniper, on that one. So let's hope we can build that momentum, keep it rolling on over to today. Everybody have a fantastic day up there. If you need any help playing the races, if you have any questions about these horses, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. It's me, Gino B. Barry always loves chatting with everyone out there. If you have any questions, he'd love to speak with you. Also, Stable Duel. They have a contest, a $20 contest. Remember, the first post today is 12:25 p.m., 12:25 Eastern time. So earlier first post. You got about an hour and a half or so. Make sure to finish up your handicapping. Get those Stable Duel lineups in race number 1. From now on, any day that there's racing at Woodbine, I'm going to be covering it. So if you ever need some help, if you're ever kicked back on a Thursday or a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's the current schedule of Woodbine racing right now. They race a little later on the day on Thursday. Then on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they have that normal post. Today is a special post for King's Plate Day. I'm really excited. And getting into these products now. It's so much fun handicapping the races each and every day at Woodbine. And today, Barry and I are going to make some money. We hope you do too, folks. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. And make sure to head to drf.com for everything you need. Hey, just want to give a little shout out to Tony. He checked in with us today. He says, hey guys,
what's up, Tony?
Tony, we didn't get a chance to talk much about Saratoga today. For me, I'm going to be playing a lot of Woodbine. I know the weather was a little bit wet, but most of the races are still on the turf today at Saratoga. I think they took just 1 or 2 of them off. But Tony, not as much for me today. My major focus is going to be out at Woodbine. And if
I got one for Tony. I got one.
There we go. Barry's got one for you.
Race number 7, number 3, Pledge of Allegiance.
Boom. Book it, Tony. Pledge of Allegiance for you. And for anyone who may have joined us late and was just looking for another horse or two, Barry and I, in the first 2 races back to back, we both landed on the same top selections of the number 10. So we would love to see a double of 10-10 in races 6 and 7. That would be a great start for Barry and me, with Rosa kicking things off, and then a Rosa to Super Watson daily double to start off this pick 5. Love you, my friend. You have a great Sunday. Talk to you again soon. And thanks so much, everyone, for hanging out with us. Make sure to get involved today up at Woodbine on their big, big day. My man, thank you so much.
Yes, indeed, man. Have a good one. I know you got some radio stuff to do, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna do I got one coming up in 8:25, and then I think another one at 8:45 my time. So yeah, just helping them plug a couple things. But thank you for switching and coming a little early, and you are the man.
I'll hit you up.
I'll hit you up, and maybe we'll do something. Is Travers this week coming up?
Yep.
Okay, I'll hit you up. Maybe we'll jump on those later in the week if you're down.
Okay. Yeah, I'm down. Always.
Awesome, my man. Thanks again.
Man.
Appreciate it. And let's crush it today.
All right, man.
Love you, buddy.
Later.